chair, vice chair, and secretary. So starting off with chair, are there any nominations? Mr. Shenovert.
Burton.
Second.
Are there any other nominations? Please let there be other nominations. Hearing none, Laurie, would you poll the committee, please?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Next nomination is for vice chair. Are there any nominations for vice chair?
Mr. Chair,
Mrs. Naparetta.
I nominate Mr. Shenovert for Vice Chair.
I will second that nomination. Any other nominations? Hearing none, Laurie, would you poll the committee, please?
Yes.
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 Yes, and then the third position for nominations is secretary. Are there any nominations for secretary of the board?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Shenovert.
I would like to nominate Ms. Naparata as the secretary.
Don't look at me, I didn't.
Another
Yeah.
nomination.
I would like to nominate Kelly Siddiqui for Secretary.
There are two nominations on the floor. I would second the nomination of Mrs. Siddiqui. Any other discussion? Hearing none, let's first poll the nomination of Mrs. Naparata.
No.
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 No. And then we will vote on the nomination for Mrs. Siddiqui as secretary.
Yes.
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 Yes. Moving on with the agenda, we will skip over the next item, approval of April 2014 minutes. And if the committee does not object, I would like to jump to item A under new business, Bartlett High School PBIS update. Good evening, Mrs. Gogan.
Good evening. I would like to ask Mr. Tracy to give us an update on the PBIS at the Bartlett High School.
Mr. Tracy, can you please push the little button on your microphone? Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me here tonight. I do have a small PowerPoint presentation. Bartlett High School has been involved with the cohort for PBIS through the Massachusetts tiered system. We actually just finished our Tier 1 3-year training on this. And so really PBIS has been involved in the district in the elementary school. When I first came on board, there was an option for the middle school or high school. And because I have PBIS training in other areas, I requested that the high school do it first. I think it was timely. Some of the data you'll see in a couple of minutes, I think, shows that it's been pretty successful. I think it's a catalyst and a reason why some of our referrals and our suspensions are down, but also some of the positive things that we've been doing in the building. I think this picture kind of says it best. You can see that the kids were all together having a very important moment, and it just shows how great our students are working in one assembly, everyone together taking this picture. And so PBIS, Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports. This is a team that started it off, Ms. Nieves, Ms. Bigelow, Ms. Nassis, Ms. Granger, Ms. McCarthy, Mr. Nassis, Ms. Morrissey, and Ms. Guiney. We went to multiple trainings. Our first year was pretty intense. 3 different training dates that were 2 days long at that time. And then as you progress through the training over the next 2 years, it singled down. And then finally at the end of March, this past March, we had to do a showcase. And there were about 20 schools at this showcase. They were running 2 cohorts at the same time, but in our cohort, 20 schools from elementary to high school. We're probably one of 20 high schools in the whole Commonwealth that use PBIS. And so we just finished that up. We're actually also in a Tier 2 part of that program in training, which there's a small group of staff, and I can kind of get to Tier 2 in a minute. So what is PBIS? It's really talking about tiered support and interventions. Now, you can think of it both academically and behaviorally. One of the key areas we've worked on it is behaviorally. And so your Tier 1 supports are the normal things that teachers in a classroom would normally do. that support most of your students in the student body. And then tier 2, you can see the number 15%, and then tier 3, 5%. So other students that need more interventions more often, and trying to organize our systems for that. The tier 1 team that we sent, we worked on some of those whole school, school-wide behavior expectations. And again, like I said, we have some tier 2 and tier 3 things for behavioral issues as well as for academic things. So the idea is to encourage positive behaviors. The research out there says that for every one negative comment a teacher should make, they should then back it up with 4 positives to the rest to create a culture and climate that is comfortable, that kids enjoy going into the classrooms and being part of the group. The other part about PBIS is collecting, analyzing data, and then making certain changes based on what you see. The better that the data is inputted, the quicker you can find things that you may need to change or tweak. And so that's the reason for the change there. Teaching and reinforcing. So we talked to teachers at the beginning of the school year and a couple of times in faculty meetings about the school-wide behavior expectations and what we want students to do. And then the key piece of PBIS is acknowledging the behavior. Now, for anyone who's seen the elementary school, does anyone know what they do to recognize the behavior in the elementary school? Anyone been down there? They used to do a lot of pause, and there was just this little blue ticket, and you would hand it to the student. And in the end, they would get some rewards. They also had stuff for a bus and everything else. They had a pretty robust system going for a while there. However, for the high school, we're not going to be passing out like paws or bucks or Indian feathers or anything of that nature. So the high school teams really, in our conversations, we were in the cohort we were in with Methuen, which is a very large school, putting PBIS into play. And that would be our constant conversation between the two schools is, well, how are you going to acknowledge behavior? So we will get to that part as well. So the one thing that we created is BHS Pride, and the BHS stands for being accountable, having respect, and striving for personal best. So if you look at our student handbook, and our handbook is pretty hefty, it's many pages. In reality, there's a lot of rules there, but you could sum up all the rules and all the things that are in the handbook under those 3 concepts or ideas. You can imagine a group of 9 people sitting around a table at these meetings going over, well, what's the best way to reflect Bartlett High School? What's the best acronym to have? And we had all sorts of things. And then the consensus was the BHS and BHS Pride. So this is created 2 years ago. Again, working with that small group, but then bringing it to the faculty over a couple of faculty meetings and deciding what are the real behaviors that we want to work on every single day in the classroom. And the key is not only are you going to work on them and talk to the students about how to do them, but if you catch a student doing it, how are you going to make a point of pointing that out? So there are 3 banners like this, very large banners. One's in the cafeteria, one's in the hallway in B2, and one's on the ramp going up to music. And that's just to make every student know what our expectations are. Also, every classroom has, you can see the learning environment for classrooms, so they have a placard just for the expectations for the classroom. But again, these are just normal things that we came up with as a group. And it was important because you had a consensus on what everyone really thought we could work on at the high school. And again, when we look at some data, I think you'll see that it was pretty useful. Part of being in the cohort is we got free access to PBIS apps. It really was a data information system where we can input data. So not only do we do certain things into PowerSchool, but we put it into this other program as well. This program's good because it prints out nice bar graphs and everything else where PowerSchool wasn't really created for that. So you can literally open up this app and it's very easy to see what's going on in real time as long as, again, the data is inputted at a pretty good rate. So we got access to that in our second year. That's why you see 2016 and 17 as well as 2017, 18. So the green You can see the numbers were much higher. I would again say around January and February, we're into a couple issues with our data entry and our secretarial staff and how we had grown accustomed to it for a year and a half. So we're working on catching some of those up, but you can see the average referrals per day definitely increased in our third year here at Bartlett. So I would say that based on what I see come through my office, because a referral is if a student is kicked out of class or hasn't stayed for detention, a teacher will send me a referral, and then I have to work off the referrals. So they have definitely decreased. We didn't have this system in our first year, which is a shame because I would like to see in our first year, when you see our suspension data from the first year of PBIS to now, I would be very interested to see how many referrals there, but it'd be too much to backtrack on that. So this is a comparable suspension data, something that I've been working on very hard with Mr. Knowlton and Mr. Nicky, having many conversations about our handbook, how we interpret our handbook and suspension. You can see the blue is 2015-16, and all the way over to the left is the amount of days. I was unable to calculate how many days students missed because of suspension. But if you look in just last year, 2016, 2017, the number of days was pretty high. That usually means a lot of like 10+ days, maybe a couple of students that received some type of exclusion. But you can see dramatically decreased this past year. And again, the students contributing to those factors, 86, 73, 37. I think we're doing a better job of identifying students in different tiers, and we have some sports, especially for the behavioral pieces that I'm talking about. We have our Journey program and we have our Quest program that deal with a lot of behaviors that 3-4 years ago that got kicked to the office. In the office, I had a couple options. I had in-school suspension, detention. So again, because we had those other places, maybe instead of coming to my office for the same conversation, they can now go to our Tier 2 or Tier 3 program. They may talk to a counselor for a little bit. They kind of process through what happened in the classroom and how can they do it better. And that's been kind of the key in reteaching the certain behaviors. And still, there's plenty of tweaks and things that we want to change in our Tier 2 and Tier 3 program, but at least we got it up and running, and I think it's running smooth just based on suspension numbers and referral numbers. So this is a great graph comparing 2 years. The amount of ODRs you'll see all the way over to the right, those are office discipline referrals. And if you look at the triangle we talked about earlier, you want most of your students in the green. That means most of the students are maybe once they're referred to the office or never at all. And you can see just last year, the increase from the majority of students not coming to the office for any type of referral. And then again, our referrals for a Tier 2 program or a Tier 3 program really being reduced. So again, we didn't have the program 3 years ago, but I would assume that the red and yellow will be much bigger even 3 years ago. 4 years ago when it was a junior, senior high, it was a totally different landscape. But it's showing progression right now, and we're going to be in a year or two probably right at the 80, 15, and 5 percentiles that we're hoping to get to. So the recognition of the positive, because again, PBIS is that positive behavioral support. So one of the first things Mr. Nicky works on every single day is attendance. This is the attendance breakfast. I take pictures of the food because it's gotten better. I'm not sure from the students. Maybe they can speak to that later, but at least new ideas. But really trying to give them a good breakfast for the class with the best attendance each quarter. That wasn't necessarily something that the PBIS group came up with. But again, before PBIS was around, it wasn't like there weren't good ideas to acknowledge positive things. Again, this is just an organized system for parts of that. So the newest breakfast was the breakfast burrito. That was last Friday. Mixed reviews on that, but I thought it was good. And the hot chocolate was around December, I think, for the second quarter. We have students of the month. We have certificates of achievement. That was perfect attendance by Ms. Padawani. That was for grades 9 through 12. We also do by quarter perfect attendance. So we're trying to highlight those students, especially with the attendance. If we're also having breakfast, how about the kids that are there all the time and make sure that they're in school every single day. So one of the key ways we really work on giving students credit for just following the normal expectations and highlighting that instead of the student that it needs the constant redirection. This would be the teacher that would say, oh, I see, Johnny, that you have your notebook out. Nice job. That's the expectation that you've met for today. So we created a Google form to make it easy. This isn't like the pause box or whatever the pause at the elementary school. This is an online form. And then we decided how are we going to let the students know that a teacher gave them a shout out. And so we used some funds from the phys ed department who thought this kind of fit in with their curriculum of bullying prevention, of pillars of character. And we purchased 2 large flat screen TVs. However, when the one went in the cafeteria and that wall was so big, I realized I should have gone much bigger. But also not only the TVs, but the software and the computers for it. Behind those TVs are little Chrome boxes, which are the computers that we use. And we use the internet to do slideshows. This past year alone, the full year of shout-outs, because shout-outs started last March, we have 311 shout-outs. So that's pretty good. I'd like to see it to be much more. In my mind, I guess I want to shout out almost every period from every teacher, but they're all busy. And again, they would have to get on the computer and give a form. So the good part about having like a pause is that could be in something in the teacher's hand that could pass it out right away. But again, that's not really a high school mentality. I think the amazing thing here is this year alone, 214 students, that's just under half of our students have been individually recognized for something that they do right every single day. So they're getting highlighted. Whereas before, who knows what was being said in the classroom and if they were getting any type of recognition. Now the students get to see this on our TVs. And you can see I took a picture of this earlier today. And these are the students and the teachers' names who gave them the shout out. So I usually update that about once a week. That's part of our normal morning announcements. Not only are they said over the intercom, but we display them through the TVs, athletics, every single announcement that's out there. Things that I found on Twitter that I can easily take and put on there. So, so students don't know what's going on in the building. And believe it or not, if you go in the cafeteria in the morning, you will see a couple students kind of looking up as best they can to see the TV and straining to see what's going on up there. So I think it's a pretty good compromise to make sure students know that we've seen the good they're doing and that we recognize them. And I think what's a mature way to do it for them. Just another thing, the students of the month, these are this past month's students of the month. We have Keith, Catherine, Troy, and Caitlin. Again, those are nominations through Google Forms, not something that the PBIS team created, but we wanted to highlight and make sure that we put on the TVs for recognition. And that ends my presentation on the board. I would just say a couple of things that we know that we need to work on is continuing to input data at a constant rate to make sure that everything's live in real time. Sometimes in the normal day in operation of things, some of those positive things don't get to be mentioned or don't get onto the TV. So that's something I'm working on expanding with our group to find a way that multiple people have access. So there's more than one person kind of controlling that and more information gets out on the TVs. So again, the team's done a great job over 3 years. Hopefully we can keep it running smooth. And I think it really has changed the culture of the building and it has led us to where we are today there. So thank you for letting me present tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Tracy. Any questions or comments from the committee? Let me first start off and obviously recognize you and your team. Some of the data is pretty dramatic in the improvements that have been made. When you look at finishing up this year and going into next year, what do you think some of the greatest challenges would be? Obviously, it appears to me, both from the data as well as interacting with students and staff, that there's a very positive culture, and I would say a very calm environment in the building. What do you think the greatest challenges are, kind of a more mature program moving forward for you and your team?
Something we've been trying to work on is implementing. The next part for the team is taking the data and some of those office referrals that we see are high flyers of just the behaviors, not necessarily the students, and really putting that into advisory lessons and teaching the whole school how we need to improve upon something. That is one thing that we've been trying to work on the past year and a half. I would also say increasing the amount of positives. Like we just saw, there's 311 shout outs, really making it happen more often. So more shout outs are happening, more students see their names. I think one thing we might look at with the data on the 214 students that we did recognize is find out who are the students that haven't been recognized and talk about it as a large group to see, well, how come? Is there something we're missing here? Is there really some of the everyday normal expectations that students are doing that we're not touching upon yet, and maybe emphasizing that? Those are a couple of challenges for next year.
And again, I just want to, Mrs. Gogan did share with us a month or two ago about your double duty now.
Yep.
So I just want to thank you for that and trying to shuffle back and forth. I'm sure at times is not the easiest, but I've heard a lot of good things. So thank you for all your efforts.
Yeah, anytime.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, we will continue with the agenda, moving on with the superintendent's report. Again, good evening, Mrs. Gogan.
Good evening. First, I'd just like to welcome our new school committee member, Mrs. Blythe. Thank you for running, and welcome back our other members. We appreciate that and your support for the schools. And I would like to just give a shout out to all of our teachers. This is Teacher Appreciation Week, and I wanted to recognize all of our teachers and staff for all their hard work that they continue to do every day for our students. And I have a number of things to fill you in on. First, I'd like to let you know that Southern Worcester County Educational Collaborative, who has been leasing rooms at the Bartlett High School, will be leaving at the end of this year. They have made the decision to go back to their Dudley site. And I think the decision's basically a financial decision for them. Second, I'd like to let you know that, and I may have let you know this already, that we received the Summer Food Grant Service Grant for $3,000. I want to thank Ellen Nyland for her continued efforts for reaching out for grants. We have about $3,185 coming in for the summer program. Most of that, or some of that, will be delegated for marketing. I would like to fill the school committee in on my last Worcester County Superintendent's Association meeting. At that meeting, the new Commissioner of Education came, and many of us know him from his previous role of being a receiver in Lawrence. And he spent some time talking to all the superintendents about his new vision of where he'd like to take the Department of Education. It was refreshing to hear that he is looking to gather the feedback from superintendents on how the Department of Education can help schools and principals and administrators and teachers in new ways. So that was refreshing. I would also like to let you know that I am coming to the conclusion of my participation in the Massachusetts Superintendent Induction Program. I certainly want to thank my coach, Suzanne Scallion, who's been a wonderful coach this past year. The program has been very helpful for me coming back into Massachusetts, but given my experience as a superintendent, I'm inclined not to participate in the formal program next year, but to continue with, reaching out to that organization for any support, which they give you for free. As you may know, we conducted evacuation drills on May 3rd. They were very, very successful at all 3 schools. I want to publicly thank the Webster Police, the EMTs, and the Fire Department for their cooperation and help with those drills. I'd also like to thank Father Luke for allowing us to access the inside of the Greek Orthodox Church for the shelter-in-place evacuations for the middle school and the high school. It was the first time that we have done a shelter-in-place in the district, and for our first time, it went exceptionally well. We happened to have the most beautiful day to do it, so everyone was in good spirits. It was a little hot, but we managed. Other updates, I would like to let you know on May 10th, there's a meeting scheduled with the town administrator and the chairs of the certain committees, the school committee, finance committee, and selectmen. We will be meeting to discuss additional Chapter 70 funds, potential additional Chapter 70 funds, and any potential discussion of overrides for FY20. I would also like to let you know, and I'm very pleased that we have been developing a very nice partnership with the Senior Center, and on May 10th, business manager, Monique Perangeli, will be visiting the senior center, setting up a table to answer any questions about the school budget. And I am happy to share with you a very lengthy list of all the events that are occurring in the district. And the most recent event was just passed out, and I'm not going to talk too much about it because I believe you will be talking about it. You didn't hear about it yet? Well, here you go. So I hope that that list is helpful to let you know about how busy this time of the year is. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from the committee? Is it possible to just post this on our webpage, the district page, just as one reference for folks to go to? I know a lot of these events are on each individual school. Going back to the Southern Worcester County Collaborative, I understand obviously their rationale. I know, correct me if I'm wrong, Mrs. Perangeli, a significant portion of our annual facility revolving account revenue came from that source. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, it is.
Obviously, we also had to spend quite a bit of that money to finish this project per the request of town meeting. Do you have a sense, knowing that we probably won't be getting any more additional revenue from them, what that balance looks like moving forward into next school year?
I believe currently we have about a $20,000 balance in the account. And before the collaborative was here, that was a self-maintaining funding program. We do many dance recitals and other events during the year where we do take in income. And there is a fee for that, for using the use of the facility. So it's always been a self-supporting fund.
Right, but that was, in my mind, that was always our emergency fund.
For
In
any.
the event that a boiler breaks, something happens with the facilities, do you feel comfortable going into the next school year knowing that balance would be, I'm guessing, roughly maybe 30 grand by the end of the summer?
I do.
Okay.
I do. I'm comfortable with it. Yep.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for Mrs. Gogan? Hearing none, thank you very much. Moving on with the agenda, the principal report, Stephen Knowlton, Bartlett High School. Good evening, Mr. Knowlton.
Good evening. I'd like to start off by sharing with you that yesterday, advanced placement testing began. That's going to extend through the next 2 weeks through May 18th. We are scheduled to have 112 students that are enrolled in AP classes, taking 205 advanced placement tests. You may not know that any student that enrolls in an AP test, unlike, well, I shouldn't say unlike other schools, but some other schools, they don't require kids to take the AP test. We do require it. In the event that a student chooses not to take it, then they will not receive AP credit. They'll get honors credit. So I think since we put that stipulation in, all of our kids take the AP test. So considering the population of our school that we have 205 tests, that's pretty high. That's a pretty impressive number.
Yeah.
Also, we have MCAS testing coming up on May 23rd and 24th. We have math MCAS for sophomores. And on June 6th and 7th, we have science MCAS for mostly sophomores, but some freshmen as well. On May 18th, we are going to have a visit from the DSAC team. As you know, we've had an ongoing relationship and work with the members of DSAC for several years now. But on May 18th, the purpose of this visit is for them to come in. They're going to be here all day. I believe there's going to be 3 or 4 members of the team coming in. They're going to visit classrooms for about 15 to 20 minutes per class. And it's simply to collect data. If you recall when I shared our school improvement plan with the focus on closing achievement gaps, trying to address graduation numbers and dropout numbers, the focus on these low-performing students. Part of that is looking at the professional practices and instructional practices that are incorporated into classrooms. So what they're going to do is they're coming in and they're going to take a look at what types of instructional practices and strategies are incorporated in classrooms. They're going to put that together and put together a report for us, and we're going to talk about, exactly what are they seeing, and that will also inform professional development and things like that down the road. to address those needs that are outlined in the school improvement. You also have in your packet, we were requested to send over, Ms. Gogan had asked for a list of all of the scholarships that we award. So in there, you will see that it's a pretty hefty list. And I will say that all of these are going to be presented on the Senior Honors Night at 6 o'clock on May 29th, with the exception of the ones in the lower right-hand corner that say Graduation Day scholarships. Those scholarships, for the most part, are those that are determined by class rank. And the class rank cannot be conclusively determined until after they finish senior exams. And senior exams start on May 25th, so they won't be finished in time, and that's just normally the way it goes. We don't really know who's getting those until a couple of days before graduation. All the grades and so forth have been calculated. The only one there that's not determined by class rank is the Webster Dudley Quo Vadis Scholarship, and the Quo Vadis people pick that one. That's awarded as well. So that's pretty much our, actually, we had a scholarship committee today. We went through a lot of these scholarships and started making some decisions on who the most worthy people were, and we try to spread the wealth around, so
Right.
it's not always easy. But we think we have a good group of scholarships and a great group of recipients for this year. So that's it for my report.
Any questions or comments from the committee? Let me just follow up to your staff and all the teachers and the wonderful staff that Mrs. Gogan mentioned. It is Teacher Appreciation Day and Week, I believe, if I read it correctly. So just on behalf of the school committee, obviously, we are very thankful for the wonderful folks that work in our district and work very hard at caring for and educating our children. So thank you very much, Mr. Knowlton. Moving on with the report, the business manager report. Good evening, Mrs. Perangeli.
Good evening. I'm going to be following up on Mr. Tracy's positive news, following up with some technology. The good news is that you haven't really heard much about technology. Over the past few years, it was a common occurrence for school committee members to question the technology in the district. We were pretty outdated and antiquated, and we were looking to update our systems. And I'm happy to say that over the past couple of years, we've really come a long way, which is why you're not hearing anything about technology. There are a lot of good things happening, and I think it's important to point out the good news and the good things the team is doing. When you don't hear anything, they kind of feel it's a thankless job, because they're only getting called when something's not working. They're not getting called to say, hey, this is working great, thanks. So I think it's important to point out the good things that they're doing. I wanted to give out a shout out to Stacy Quilty, who is our data specialist for the district. We actually have 4 people on our technology team. Stacy is the data specialist. We have John O'Neill, who is the technology specialist. He oversees some of the network infrastructure and handles all the day-to-day operations. We have Vernon, who's behind the doors back there. He is the Wizard of Oz. And we have Deb Ramsdell, Vernon Tyson and Deb Ramsdell. And they rotate between the buildings to handle all the day-to-day operations and work with the schools. We are finally at the point in the district where this year we've been able to become a little proactive. We started out a couple of years ago. We brought on, Stacy was actually the first one that we brought on board about 5-6 years ago to oversee the data within the district, all the state reporting that happens. That job is a full-time job, making sure that all the information in our student information system is accurate with all the state reporting, all the work assignments and files that are uploaded. It's very important to make sure that all that data is correct, and that's also where our state funding comes from. They look at the data that we're uploading in the system. So she has been handling that for about 5-6 years now. And about a year ago, we started looking at our special education software. We were talking with Ms. Barris, and the systems that they were using was becoming very outdated. And so we started looking at different systems throughout. Our student information system right now is PowerSchool, and we heard that they were purchasing or coming out with a module, a special education module. We were a little nervous about a year ago, jumping on as it was new to PowerSchool. And there were a couple of the districts that were coming on in that year. So we said we'd wait it out and see how it goes, see how the transitions. We didn't want to be the guinea pig for that system, and see how the other schools did with the transition. So about a year later, we decided, following up on that, that the transition went very, very well, and they worked through all the bugs of switching over. If anybody's gone through a data or a new conversion, it is very time-consuming and is very tedious, and it's not easy. It takes a lot of hours and effort, and you really need somebody guiding the process and overlooking the process. And that's where Stacy came in for the district. She worked closely with Ms. Barris. The decision was made to go to Power School. We were converting over from SEMS Tracker because of the instability of the system. So in January of 18 this year, we had a kickoff meeting with Power School, and they started going over the conversion process and timeline of that. So it was a good thing that we started going on, because as we started going through the process, a SEMS tracker was becoming very unstable to a point that it was actually offline for about 3 weeks, where we couldn't use it at all. We couldn't access our information. Information was lost, and staff had to re-enter information into the system. So having the system, this new system integrated with Power School, it just really streamlines the data flow. So there's no longer double entry, there's less chance of error. It's a lot easier for staff members to access and look at the data. There were just many positives about the system. So this past week, I want to say about 2 weeks ago, was April 30th, I believe, was our go live date. The staff in-house are now using Power School Special Ed software. Kathy and her staff have worked extremely hard with the team chairs, Lynn Bent, Maria, all the team chairs, at all the special ed teachers at all the schools, taking all the data, scanning, making PDFs, uploading the stuff, verifying data, cleaning data, making sure that we're starting off the system with good, clean, accurate information. So I think they all deserve a shout out for that. It was a lot of effort to do that. And you really didn't hear anything about it district-wide. I'm sure behind closed doors at times you might have heard something about the conversion. But you could walk through the offices, and I never really heard any complaining or screaming or slamming of doors saying, this is crazy. They did a great job really converting to that system. So I think they all deserve a huge shout out, and I want to thank Stacy for her work on that. It's ongoing. And it's a good thing that we did make the switch, because we received notification that SEMS Tracker is actually ending as of July 1st. So we couldn't have done it at a better time. So I just wanted to give them a huge shout out. And then I also wanted to thank the other half of the tech team. I wanted to thank John, Vern, and Deb. They have been working tirelessly this year, really learning the systems and taking on additional roles now that they're here and they understand the network, they understand our system. They have been learning software programs in the system. They are rotating through the schools, so they have knowledge of all the school systems. They're starting to take over the website. They're hiding behind doors in the school committee room, learning the equipment that we got here, and cross-training. So they have been crazy busy with MCAS testing. It's all technology-based now. It's all doing it on computers, and that just doesn't happen. There's certain structures that have to be in place. And it has been a seamless transition for that. They have worked tirelessly on that. Setting up Proctor cash machines, making sure all the Chromebooks are scrubbed and ready to go and working, and that all the students have their equipment ready to go on the day of testing. So they are doing that while maintaining tickets and coming in every day with a happy smile on their face and greeting people, and just rolling with it. And so I just think they all deserve a huge shout out, and I wanted to thank them publicly for their efforts this year. It's nice to not have the daily complaints and the daily, this isn't working. Stuff happens, things break, and technology can go wrong at times, but there's a lot of good things happening behind the scenes, and they're working really hard to make that happen. So I just wanted to say thank you for that. And then the second thing on my list is the open house. This weekend, Saturday morning, we had the open house here for our administrative offices. Bay Path came down. We had about, I want to say 20, 25 people maybe show up. who toured the building, looked at the work the kids did. The superintendent from Bay Path was here, some school committee members from Bay Path, and the project manager was here. The architect came in for the last time, seeing it all with office furniture, and he was snapping away pictures and really proud of the work that the kids did. This is the first, he commented that this is the first time his company has done something like this, and he couldn't have been more pleased or thrilled with the whole process. He said the education the kids got is, you can't compare to anywhere else, that they don't have the skill when, normal vocational schools coming in and working on a commercial project like this. So he would do it again in a heartbeat, he said, and he thought it was a great process for all, for kids, teachers, and himself. It was a learning experience. So I just wanted to thank everybody for coming out, and thank you for this wonderful space. We are happy here. We love it. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from the committee for Mrs. Perangeli? Just to reiterate, it was very nice for Mr. Tremblay, one of the Webster School Committee representatives for Bay Path, and Mr. LaFleche, and I believe Mr. Montville? And then the teachers to come on a Saturday morning, a very nice Saturday morning where I'm sure most folks would have liked to have been outside doing something, but it was really nice for them to come. And Mr. Avlis, yes, it was also wonderful and Mr. McCara stopped by, so that was very nice. The only question I have related to technology, well, first of all, thank you for all your efforts, because I think a couple years ago, thinking back, when the brand-new school wasn't working well during MCAS, and the Wi-Fi in the middle school and here was, for lack of a better term, somewhat of a disaster. And I know behind the scenes, you put a tremendous amount of effort, getting the contractors in here and helping to coordinate the internal teams. So thank you for your efforts. I'm guessing the next thing we're going to be talking about in the relatively near future is the upgrades of the Chromebooks, that we need to try to come up with a plan with regards to beginning to replenish those.
Absolutely. Mr. O'Neill is already working on a recycling plan. That's something we've been working on behind the scenes. One of our goals, I know before Mr. Avlis left, we talked about using school choice money to maybe fund some of that recycling of technology. And we also use current E-rate funding, which supplements some of the technology here.
Does the E-rate funding, do we get to keep that money, or does that go back to the town side?
No, we do keep it.
Okay.
We have to budget what our full cost would be for for our telephone cost or our internet cost. We have to budget the full amount, but we get a discount on our bill, and that money is supposed to be reinvested into technology.
Okay. So that's the intent of the E.
Correct.
Okay.
And we've been using that to purchase more Chromebooks. That's what
Oh.
we've been using over the past couple of years to recycle.
So we've already been
last-
doing that?
Last year, we were able to buy 5th grade and 9th grade Chromebooks for the grade level. So that way the new grades coming in get new Chromebooks, and then the ones when the seniors are graduating were recycled into loaners and users, for replacements.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. Moving on, next item on the agenda is the student update. Good evening, ladies. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
How many more days left?
13.
13, lucky 13.
So before I start my report, I would just like to briefly introduce Mariah. She's going to be the 2018 to 2019 representative, and she's going to introduce herself to you guys right now.
Can you just slide your mic, because the people at home would love to hear what you're saying.
My name is Mariah, and I would like to start off by saying thank you for having me and having me be part of the committee, and just being here with all of you guys is great. A few things about myself is I'm very focused on my academics. I take difficult courses, and I take school very seriously. And I also participate in a lot of after-school activities, such as band. I'm in 3 different bands. I'm in the concert band, jazz band, and in the pit band for the show choir. And I also I'm a big family person. I have 5 siblings, so I have a big family, and then I have lots of cousins. So overall, a people person, I guess you'd say, and I'm glad to be here.
Well, thank you very much. And again, the committee is very excited that you'll be joining us next year. As you can tell, these are very exciting meetings. And this isn't your last meeting, correct?
I don't think so.
Okay. But Laiz has been wonderful, and you have big shoes to fill, but I'm sure you will fill them well.
Thank you.
So carrying on with my report, I have a couple of academic related announcements. Progress report grades will close this Friday, May 11th. The year is going by faster and faster as we speak. It's crazy. There was a college fair held last week in the gymnasium for the juniors, and students enrolled in business law attended a field trip to the Worcester County Jail and House of Correction last Friday, and they had the privilege of enjoying lunch at the Blackstone Valley Plaza. Excuse me. Student Council attended their spring conference in North Brookfield last week, and they also participated in the Walk for Hunger in Boston on Sunday, May 6th. This Thursday, National Honor Society members will be visiting the New England Aquarium in Faneuil Hall as a field trip, and show choir toured the State House, and they had lunch with Senator Fatman on Thursday, May 3rd last week. My brother was really excited about that one because that was right on his birthday, too. I have an announcement pertinent to the seniors, forms for senior athletic plaques, which are plaques that recognize the students' participation in sports throughout the years. There are forms to receive those available in guidance or with Mr. Peranto. Those will be due Friday. And prom is coming up. It's going to be this Saturday at Indian Ranch. All students received an email this week being reminded that no, they cannot drive their boats to prom, and that they will have to swim to shore in their nice clothes if they do. The elections for class officers and student council members for the class of 2018 to 2019 will begin on Monday, May 14th. Candidates can pick up their election forms with Ms. Hurton. Those are due May 18th by 2 p.m., no exceptions. And I'd like to extend a congratulations to the Drama Club on their showing of Arsenic and Old Lace. I heard awesome things about it. I wish I could have gone, but I was out of town all weekend. And I would also like to congratulate Alyssa Ward for signing with Regis College for softball. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments for Lais? Do you mind if I ask you a question about Mr. Tracy's presentation?
I don't mind.
So you're obviously finishing your 6th year at Bartlett, starting off in 7th grade. Especially in the last 4 years as a student, have you seen an improvement with regards to what we see at the data as far as behavior and the culture in the building and that type of thing?
Yeah. I think that the beginning of this year was probably like the best I've ever seen like Bartlett. Like you could walk through the halls and like it almost seemed like there was nobody there. Like the students there are like really, really behaved. And the only thing, like the only complaint that I have for student behavior is the halls. It's so annoying when you're walking in the halls and there are just clusters of people who, they clump up and like, we get it, you're gonna see your friend in another hour. You don't have to hug them between every period, and it's just that's the only thing. I think that students that the intervals between classes they should really be taken into account. But that's not really a problem that you guys can fix. That's on us.
So you think Mr. Tracy should get a big raise for all the good work he's done?
I mean, maybe just a little bit. No, I'm just kidding.
Thank you very much for your honesty and humor. Moving on under old business, the first item under old business is the third and final reading of policy AC non-discrimination. We have multiple policies that are in the third and second reading that have been amended due to the enactment of the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. And for some of our newer members, it is school committee policy that whenever there's a new policy or an amendment to an existing policy, we do go through 3 readings. And the intent is that there's potential comments from the committee during each one of the first 2 meetings with the expectation that at the 3rd reading, the amended policy will be adopted. Was there anything else you wanted to add, Mrs. Gogan, prior to?
No.
All right. So any questions or comments from the committee? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the updated policy AC non-discrimination.
So moved.
Second?
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Laurie, would you pull the committee, please?
Yes.
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 Yes. Next item under old business is third and final reading policy GBA, equal employment opportunity. Again, updated due to the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the amended policy GBA.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Laurie, would you poll the committee, please?
Yes.
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 Yes. Next item is the third and final reading of policy GCF, professional staff hiring. Again, updated to include the language from the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. Any questions or comments from the committee? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the updated policy GCF.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Laurie, would you poll the committee, please?
Yes.
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 Yes. Next item is the third and final reading of policy JB, Equal Employment Opportunities. Again, updated due to the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. Any questions or comments from the committee? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the amended policy JB.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Laurie, would you poll the committee, please?
Yes.
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 Yes. Next item on the agenda is the second reading of policy JFBB, school choice. Again, it has been amended to reflect the language due to the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, which I believe would be found in item 6 of the updated policy in the last sentence. Any questions or comments from the committee? Hearing none, this will constitute the second reading with the anticipation that the updated policy would be approved at our next meeting for the third and final reading. Next item on the agenda is the monthly fundraising report. Again, school committee policy is that we receive all of the fundraisers that have been approved for the previous month. We do not have to formally approve them. It is for information purposes. This month, we've had a fundraiser by Mrs. Doherty for the trip next spring, Mr. Carney for the show choir, Mr. Renaud for the boys soccer, and a lovely person who heads up our student council. Again, at full disclosure, that one is actually my wife. School committee does not approve the fundraisers, so are there any questions or comments from the committee with regards to the fundraisers that are presented this evening? Hearing none, again, these are all listed on the district website. If anyone has any questions, they can reach out to the individual school or check the district website. Moving on to new business, we have already gone over item A, so we will continue with item B, which is the approval of Bartlett High School Program of Studies. Mrs. Gogan.
Thank you. Mr. Knowlton and Mr. Tracy are still here. The Bartlett Program of Studies was redone this year with the help of the Bartlett High School administration, the teachers at Bartlett High School, the department heads, and the curriculum leaders. And I'd like to ask Mr. Knowlton and Mr. Tracy to speak a little bit about the process and the new program of studies.
Well, this document is one that obviously has been in use for some time, and it really was overdue to have a major overhaul in terms of whether it be from the accuracy of what the course summaries contained versus what was actually taking place in the classrooms. The entire formatting of it, there were places in there where from department to department, the formatting was inconsistent and was not the same. What we did was, Becky Zernicki really spearheaded this, so kudos to her. She put a lot of time and effort into this and did a lot of the actual formatting herself. We looked at some exemplars from around the state and kind of pick and chose and tweaked ours with respect to some of the highlights that we found in others to improve our document, to bring it up to speed on par with the others. So if you go through, you can see that everything is again, like I said, formatted consistently. All of under the leadership of each of the curriculum leaders within the departments, they went through over several months of department time. They went through and they read and discussed and brought up to speed all of the language in the course summaries. So we feel right now that we have an updated document that really reflects truly what's going on in our classrooms, and we think it's in good shape moving forward into the next school year.
Any questions or comments from the committee? Let me first, again, thank you and Mr. Nicky and everyone else who worked on this. I'm sure this type of document, to update it, not just only from a format standpoint, but from a content standpoint, is quite a difficult task. This may be a silly question, but the difference between accelerated and honors, is that Nichols Honors Academy versus traditional honors? Is that the difference?
Yes.
Is it possible?
Different quality points, too, assigned to that when you do their overall grade point average.
So just taking, for instance, English 1, is English 1 accelerated, have a more advanced curriculum than English 1 honors?
Yes.
Okay. And can students who are not in the Nichols Honors Academy take any of the accelerated courses?
They could. They could. It hasn't happened very often.
Right.
But if, if their prerequisites and their, their previous academic performance warrants it, they could certainly be in there.
This may be a question for Mrs. Gogan, which again is not easy to answer, but for the 4 years I've been on the committee, I hear a lot of the term college and career readiness. I see here we go accelerated honors college. Unfortunately, for those students that either choose not to or may not get in to Bay Path, what do we offer from a career readiness standpoint that, for lack of a better term, can be used if our students aren't continuing on to college?
That's a great question, and it's a question that I have actually brought to the table. We are in the process of looking at what kind of programs we can bring to Bartlett next year. We have had a meeting actually scheduled with some folks at Quinsigamon to talk about what kind of courses they can bring to us. We have to start thinking about what kind of vocational programs that we can put into Bartlett High School on the positive chance that we're going to get a building project. That was part of our SOI. And so we are in the process of trying to figure what those programs are going to look like. There's a variety of things that we can offer. Part of our conversation includes our guidance counselors, our administration at the high school, and also our adult education program. So we're looking to make sure that whether it's a medical field or CNAs or early child care programs, that we start to branch out to be a little bit more creative about those programs that may be designed for students that aren't going to college, that are going right to work. I don't have complete answers for you because we're in the beginning phases of really opening up that conversation with the staff at the Bartlett High School and some outside agencies that might be able to provide us some help. I was quite pleased on Saturday to have the conversation with the Bay Path superintendent, and I have not yet been able to go up there to take a look at what programs are up there. I'm sure that will spark our thinking. And I know there are some regulations about what we can offer in comparison to what they offer. So that ball is rolling, but I don't have any firm answers for what those programs might look like. But I do know that we do need to be planned for the positive chance that we are getting a building project.
And just the fact that the discussion is beginning, obviously, is the first step, so that is very positive from my perspective. Any other comments or questions for Mrs.
Chair.
Knapp? Yes.
So I just want to ask a clarifying question regarding the Social Studies Department course of studies and its alignment with the Nichols Honors Academy course of study, and the graduation requirement being 2 U.S. history courses. I just wonder where they will take the 2 U.S. history courses.
Well, the Nichols Honors Academy, they take World History 2 in grade 9. They take the World History in grade 10, the AP World History.
Right.
And then they can take the U.S. in grades 11 and 12.
Okay. But so they would take 2 years of AP US history. Is it the same course?
No, I'm sorry. They take AP US history. After they take world in 10th grade, they take AP US in 11th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have elective options like AP Psych and things like that for grade 12.
And that will meet the requirement of 2 US
Yes.
history courses? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Again, thank you for the effort going into that, and we appreciate it. Moving on, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the out-of-state field trip grade 2 to Roger Williams Zoo. It looks like grade 2 wants to attend the zoo on June 7th. And again, for our newer members, it is school committee policy that any out-of-state field trips do need to be approved by the school committee. Any additional information, Mrs. Gogan, that I've missed?
No, this is an annual trip, and annually it comes to the school committee.
Any questions or comments from the committee? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the grade 2 out-of-state field trip to Roger Williams Zoo on June 7th.
So moved.
Second?
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Laurie, would you pull the committee, please?
Yes.
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 Yes. Next item on the agenda is to appoint school committee member to Unit B contract negotiations. In our packet, we have an email from Mr. Kaczynski requesting, as president of Unit B, to accept the email as formal request to enter into contract negotiations at our earliest convenience. Again, as per our school committee policy, we do usually have one school committee representative who is part of contract negotiations. Was there anything else you wanted to add, Mrs. Gogan?
No?
Since my colleagues have volunteered to be on the other 3, I would certainly volunteer. Again, I don't believe it's a conflict of interest in that my wife is a member of the WEA, and I believe even though you are both part of the MTA, it is a completely separate union. Would you agree with that statement? I'm sorry to put you on the spot. I just realized you happen to be part of it.
I'm not exactly sure.
I guess, Mrs.
I have no
Gogan, would
idea,
you
to be
think
honest
there's
with
any potential conflict?
No, I do not.
Okay. And if obviously any of the committee members believe there's any potential conflict, I do volunteer, but I want to just make it very clear that my wife is a member of the WEA, which I don't believe is the same. So what is the intent of the committee?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Shenevert,
I make a motion to appoint you as the school committee member to the Unit B contract negotiations.
Second?
there is a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Laurie, would you pull the committee, please?
Yes.
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 Yes. Next item on the agenda is the designation of email record keeper. Again, per the open meeting law, any messages between public officials to ensure compliance, the school committee chair, in consultation with the superintendent, annually designates a central office staff member who is copied on all email correspondence between and among school committee members. The messages are printed and retained in the central office with other school committee records. In the past, the school committee has designated Ms. Glennon as our email record keeper. And why stop tradition? What is the intent of the committee?
Chair,
Mr. Shenevert.
I make a motion to continue to have Ms. Glennon as our email record keeper.
Second?
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Laurie, would you pull the committee, please?
Yes.
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 Yes. Next item on the agenda is the designation of a legislative representative. Again, the school committee designates a person who may or may not be a member as a legislative representative, part of the reorganization meeting. The legislative representative is authorized to speak on behalf of the school committee regarding legislation considered by the Massachusetts legislature or the U.S. Congress per policy BJ. Any discussion and/or what is the intent of the committee?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Shenevert.
in the past, that has been Mr. Avalos, am I correct?
I think it was me, actually.
Oh, it was you?
Or was it Mr. McCara? Yeah, I think it historically has been the vice chair. It can be anybody.
I'd be more than happy.
Would that be a formal motion?
Yes.
Would there be a second?
Yes.
There's a motion and a second for Mr. Shenever to be the legislative representative. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Laurie, would you pull the committee, please?
Yes.
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 Yes. Last item under new business is the approval of surplus lines. Mrs. Perangeli is asking for the school committee to declare 2 each New Age Industrial 1256 racks and 1 each Kelmax Equipment CR 162 rack. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
This is from Ms. Nyland. We have a lot of number 10 can racks over at the middle school. Their only use is for a number 10 can. If you have seen a number 10 can, they're about this big. We've had many of them sitting in the back room in storage space, and there's not a lot of room over at Webster Middle School, so we'd just like to make room for the custodians. They haven't been in use for quite some time, so they're just kind of sitting there. We tried actually looking at prices to sell. We got a price from one of the distributors for $50 as if we would bring it to them and deliver it. So in conversations, we checked with the Webster Food Share, they didn't need it. We checked with the Worcester Food Bank, they didn't need it. We're having a difficult time getting rid of them. So in conversations with Southbridge, they could use some can racks, so they have requested, if we donate them, they'd be happy to come pick them up.
And in the notes, there's also outdated reading books materials to Life Point Church. Is that also requested to be included in this motion?
Yes, it is. The old reading program, we'd like to donate that to the Life Point Church in Chicopee, Mass., and to Dr. Kelly Carrera to distribute the materials to the detention center in Bridgeport, Connecticut.
Any questions or comments from the committee? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to declare the attached list of items as obsolete and to direct the business manager to auction off, donate, or otherwise recycle/dispose of these materials in conjunction with provisions of Mass General Law 30B.
So moved.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Laurie, would you pull the committee, please?
Yes.
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 Yes. Next item on the agenda is the review, transfer signing of bills, payrolls, and vouchers.
Thank you, gentlemen. Have a good night.
So, Mrs. Perangeli, you may need to ask Mrs. Siddiqui to stop by. Do you need 3 for the payroll? Because she is also the payroll. I believe Mr. McCara and Mrs. Siddiqui were both payroll designees. And we may want to actually add that to the next agenda for the warrant and payroll. No, where do you sign? I have no idea.
What's that?
Where do you sign? Where the tabs are?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm missing. There were spaces. Except not the blue ones.
Okay, the green tabs?
Yeah, that's right.
So the next item on the agenda is enter into executive session. I will entertain a motion to enter into executive session according to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, S1, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation if an open meeting may have detrimental effect on litigating position of the public body.
So moved.
Second?
There is a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Laurie, would you pull the committee, please?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, and for those that may be watching, we will be turning the cameras off. We will only be coming back to open meeting to adjourn our meeting. So we will not be discussing anything else in open session aside from adjourning open meeting. So we will enter into executive session.